that every single person on this planet is of equal value. And there is no hierarchy really that exists within that. There's no hierarchy of somebody just being simply born and of being of more value or inherently given power over other people because of, these characteristics of whether it's gender, of race, of, of economic scale, of any of those things. Like none of those things really apply. But I want
It's the
to.
way you run business too. You're always like, something I admire about you, and why a part of the reason I'm proud to be in business with you is because when you hire people, you hire them based on their skills and experience and their interview, and you believe that they are what they said they were going to be until they prove you wrong,
Right.
until they prove otherwise. And I think that that's exactly the way that we should be looking at people, and specifically related to hierarchy and patriarchy and matriarchy is just believe they're qualified until they show you that they're not based on any other outside factor, whether they're a man or a woman or, born into a king's family.
One of the fundamental pieces of, and I'm going to use in this case specifically patriarchy, is there is this concept that as a patriarch of a family unit, that it is the responsibility of the wife and of the children to make sure that that father and husband is feeling emotionally good, happy, at peace. And and they're responsible for it. They're responsible to it. The other side of this coin is that if they don't feel that way, if something has happened to disturb their peace or to make them unhappy or to make them miserable, then that also means that the same wife and children are to then blame for them not have for their emotional and mental state, right? That if you're responsible for that and you failed at carrying out your responsibility, there's now a justification for not just anger, an anger response, right? It is a justification in some cases of physical and mental and emotional abuse. It's a justification for um, punishment is the word I would use, in terms of punishing the wife for somehow her failing at her role and responsibility. And to me, this is very dangerous. It's encouraging this idea that men, in the case of patriarchy, are like they don't they want everyone else to control themselves. They want to be in control of other people, but that they have no responsibility for self-control. And that's a scary thing, in my opinion.
Yeah.
It has produced many situations. There's this movement, and I'm gonna put my opinion out there about this too. This cult like Christian nationalist thing that's happening. All these pop-up Christian religions are calling themselves that, and they're really pushing patriarchy, and they're really pushing for keep sweet for the ladies,
It's
and
called, we were talking about this not that long ago. I forget what it's called.
what part?
The What's it called? What you're describing, the cult.
Oh, I mean, but I'm saying that there's many of them. There's just there's these they're kind of
There's a movement.
they're naming themselves a Christian religion, and they'll just like these like pop-up religions out of nowhere. And then the whole system is like built around this concept of patriarchy. And there are things in that, in terms of like women shouldn't work, women shouldn't vote, women shouldn't, they should just keep sweet. They should, sexually be available for their husbands whenever. And if you don't do these things, you're failing. And if you're failing at doing the things to make your husband feel wanted and loved and nurtured and cared for and hand fed and have their butts wiped for them and all these things that like are what make men feel at peace in their home, and if you're failing at these things, then it's a justification for men to do bad things without any accountability. And I feel like that, to me, again, if you've paid any attention to any of the videos I've done, I'm a big accountability person. Like, true, 100% accountability. that's the difference between being an adult and a child. It's like one of the biggest distinguishing factors. As an adult, you're making choices. And, and in these choices, it's not so much people making mistakes. It has to do with like being an adult, making a choice and being accountable to those choices. And so when I look at this and I go, patriarchy basically eliminates accountability to men. It gives them a way to blame, so again, if my wife isn't fulfilling my sexual needs, then I'm justified in going and finding it with another woman. And it's her fault that I had an affair. It's her fault that I would seek it. If he's angry because he's having an emotional experience he doesn't want to have, then I'm justified in physical abuse and physical violence towards my wife and my children, because they're failing at, my wife's failing at making me feel a certain way and making sure I feel that way all the time. And so for me, like, these are aspects of patriarchy. I feel like now there are attempts at kind of like repackaging, remarketing the concept of patriarchy around this idea, men also, like, they're also responsible, these patriarchs are also responsible for being protectors and providers and caregivers, and they're there to, like, make sure that their wife is also happy and make sure that, like, her needs are being met. And it's packaged that way, but is it
That's
really
not
like
what's happening.
about what your wife's needs are? Is it really about what she actually wants, or is it what you think she should want? Is it
It's
you know
you
what
tell her
what you
she
think?
should want.
And by the way, is there any space in that for her to change her mind? Maybe at one point in time she wanted to be a full-time stay-at-home mom and have 8 kids, and then 2 kids in, she's like, I've changed my mind. I don't want to be a full-time stay-at-home mom. I want to work in some capacity. I want to have my own identity. I want to stop having kids at 2. I want you to be participating, because if I'm working and contributing financially and you're working contributing financially, we both should be contributing to every single aspect of the home.
And then
You
she's
know?
stuck. And then it's called a cult.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if you want to get into that part of it when you talk about like your experience of growing up in terms of like your parents' dynamic and what drove them to stay married, but like there was also other aspects of that as well, right? In terms of
Oh, yeah,
your
there were
mom going through.
definitely. I did share earlier that most of the reason that I think they stayed together was and stayed in the traditional nuclear setup was because that's how they were raised and they were determined to stay together because their parents didn't.
Right.
And that's how they could stay together. What ended up happening was my mom uh, made herself in staying in that role, she crippled herself, her ability to be financially independent. And when I was in middle school time frame ish is when she started like really putting her foot down and being like, no, damn it, like I want to have a say and have my own money and be able to make decisions with it. And so she went back to work very part-time, but still was able to like buy the car that she wanted to buy instead of just taking whatever car my dad decided that she should have. There was no like physical abuse or anything like that going on, but they definitely had their roles. And I think my dad enjoyed being the provider and the decision maker, and my mom did until she didn't. And
Right.
then she wanted to change her mind and to get her independence, and it created a lot of friction between them. So yeah, that has a lot to do with it too. She was for a time, I do believe that there was a time where she would have left if she could have,
Mm.
but she wasn't actually financially able to support herself, so she didn't.
Right.
They ended
And
up taking care of each other until their dying day and
yeah.
had a wonderful like ending and really really did right by each other. But every marriage goes through its ups and downs, and that's a piece of their struggle.
Right. And that's the upside to this. I think that when people now, if you stay married and you recognize that this shit is hard, like, let's just put it out there, marriage, relationships, friendships, it's all hard. It's all really hard stuff. And it takes, like, you have to have some fight in you, to work through those hard times together and to navigate through them. And I mean, legit, it's a real fight to choose to stay together. But the reasons you stay together now aren't what they were even 30 years ago. It's not because we're trapped. It's not because you have to stay. It's because you're choosing to stay. and you're choosing to navigate that, and you're choosing to work through it, and you're choosing to go, yeah, you're screwed up, I'm screwed up, we got our problems, we're trying to navigate through it, hopefully we can figure this thing out, and we're just going to keep fighting for each other. It's also interesting to you know be Catholic and be a part of this, like, thing that's perceived as being so hierarchical based, and then to have the views that I have today. And I mean, I will also tell you, like, my mom raised me to have a voice. She raised me to have an opinion. She raised me to stand up for what is right. As a Catholic, specifically as a Marianist, I was raised in that community to stand up for what's right, to have a voice, to never just sit back passively, to believe in social justice. Long before all the social justice and the movement things, this was already happening in my life growing up, around environmentalism, around equality, around, like, loving and caring is always the answer, and to not ever take a violent approach, to never tolerate other people being abused or neglected, to take to feed the homeless, to provide shelter, to be, to believe in being a place for refugees to come to seek asylum. Like, these are all things that existed, in my Catholic experience growing up, and to be passionate about it, and this. And these are things I'm so proud of. I'm so proud to be a part of that, and to stand up today for things I see, injustices that I see happening in the world, and to have a voice about that, and to never be quieted. And if anybody knows me, good luck trying to quiet me, because it will never happen. And I will always stand up for what I believe is right and for what I believe is good, even if it's not the popular opinion, even if it's not in alignment with, like, it's like, hey, get in line. It's the reason why I never joined a sorority. There's a reason why I could never join the military, not because I don't, my practically my entire mom's side of the family is military, so I come from a military family, but it was more of like the get in line and do what you're told and never question anything. I was raised to question everything by these
But
traditional
you
parents.
still do respect authority. That's
I
you very much.
respect
Yeah.
everyone.
Yeah.
I would say that that's the way I view it. It's not about respecting a particular group. It's about respecting everyone. And until you prove yourself to be someone who doesn't deserve respect because of how you treat other people, I will always treat every person with respect and care, and humanity, behind it. But there's a lot of, like, if you kind of think about every individual as like their own unique soup recipe, and there's all these different things, and like over the course of your life different things are being added or taken away, but like if you put something into the soup and you take that ingredient away, it's still there, like that experience is still there, and it's still influencing the flavor, type of thing. Like, that's how I kind of see people. And to say all of our opinions and our experiences matter, but we also can hopefully influence each other in a really positive way, where we can start to see, and things that we go, oh gosh, like, I didn't see it that way, I didn't realize this, I didn't know before. Like, hearing your experience, hearing what you've gone through. And I hope that that's the part that when we think about topics like patriarchy, hierarchy, matriarchy, and again, the fundamental brokenness, that's this, like, assumed greater power or value that's based on a trait that people are just born into, and how many negative and bad things could come from that. Again, whether we're talking about abuse, whether we're talking about, you can look through history in terms of slavery, you can look through it in terms of indentured servitude, there's so many things that come from a certain population wanting to perpetuate a certain belief system that somebody is just inherently better than, greater than, of more value, of possessing of more power, because of a certain trait that they're born into. And for me, I hope that as we evolve, as we as we evolve as human beings, and we hopefully get better at, like, parenting children when they're young, and we provide them with that safe, loving, nurturing environment, and we feed that emotional intelligence when they're young, then when they get older, they don't need to feel like, I need to feel more important than everybody else. I need to have more power over other people. I need to control other people. Maybe if we all, as we evolve and as generations go by, if we get better at that piece of it in terms of how children are being raised, we'll actually start to work towards, the thing that I would hope we all want, which is like to lead a happy, peaceful
Let
existence, right?
something else be the motivation besides just
Yeah.
being more important. Let doing the right thing be your motivation. Let being a good person and helping others and looking out for others be your motivation. I think better things will come from that.
Right. To me, there's nothing positive or healthy that comes from being consumed with a desire for power,
Yeah.
a desire for control of other people. I think that's when pretty bad and evil things can start to enter into a human being, and you start to become really vulnerable, to those things. So,
And it's often the people that have the least amount of control over themselves, and they feel out of control, that they go grabbing for straws and trying to control other people, other groups, other situations. So, and that's not good.
Well, I'm going to call it a wrap on this.